Awesome. Well, it's so nice to meet you face to face.
Finally.
Wow, like what a year, 2 years almost. But I'm so excited to, have you both on stage here and really just connect and share your story, because we can't change what we don't speak of. And so for you guys to be brave enough to share your story and to speak about it, I just honor that. So thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome, and it's something that we talked about as a family to move forward. We don't get into the details, but it's very important to talk about it and to inspire, and people always look and say, oh, we call it the Facebook life, like, oh, you're perfect, you're this, you're that, but you know what, deep down things may not be good. So our story, we're hoping to inspire, and we'll be speaking here today and at Let's Talk, Bell Let's Talk Day, the National Hope Movement, and we've done a few other things. So it's not easy, but it's something that we think is very important.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll just maybe dive into share about your journey.
Yeah, I guess it's something, again, just like Jade said, we think it's important. Sometimes, projection of people, when you see them at first, you think everything's perfect, right? Or that they're living this perfect life. But I think the thing that I appreciated the most through my own healing journey this past year is really talking to people and getting honest about their struggles, whether they had depression or anxiety or things that had gone on for them, whether they had lost a family member. And so it was important for us to talk about, what we went through or what I went through too as well, and then how it impacts the family too as well, because that's the thing about mental health. It's there's the individual, but then if you're married or you have children, it's that impact too as well. And so it's important for us to talk from both perspectives. So, yeah. But what happened, I guess, for me, and again, I can say, I had 2 children, never had any postpartum or anything like that. I can, honestly feel like I never struggled with any mental health prior to this. But 2020, busy at my work, and we were getting everyone getting back to the office, and something just started to happen. And we had a very close friend who passed away. I took it very emotionally, and then all of a sudden I wasn't sleeping. And I had these multiple nights of not sleeping. But then it was just a complete breakdown of reality where I felt like God was speaking to me, telling me I needed to change things in my life. And then everything I noticed were messages on my phone, conversations that I were having, the colors that I saw, things that I saw on TV. And at the time, I was thinking I was having this mystical experience, this incredible, you think God is talking to you. And I was a very spiritual person, and so it was happening around Easter. And I had a friend, I didn't disclose it a lot, but I had a friend who said, there's something going on for you, you need to talk to your family. But I just held back. And I just continued, and again, it was, the voices got louder, and that things were coming and happening for me. And the other unfortunate part is there was paranoia with that too as well. And it's very common, and that's one of the things, that I think it's important to understand. Later on, I did end up in the hospital, and I was diagnosed with what's called unspecified psychosis. And so at the time, like knowing now around it, it's important to understand that your paranoia will be directed to your family, and which is the hardest, right? Because then you don't disclose what's going on, and that's a very part of psychosis. As well as schizophrenia. The very common things around anyone who knows someone with schizophrenia is hearing voices. You don't think there's anything wrong. So it's really hard to come to terms to it. And then even when I was at the hospital, I felt like I was healing people. And so again, it was positive, right? I sometimes describe psychosis as 2 things. I once heard this study, and it was on CBC radio, and they were talking about how everyone probably knows around World Health Organization, that they do there's an organization that does, they look at who are the happiest countries. You probably heard all those rankings and stuff like that. So I actually did another study around, they looked at people who had some devastation that happened to them. So they had gotten into a car accident and they had been paralyzed. Then they looked at another group of people who actually won the lottery. And what they discovered is the people who, obviously had this horrible thing happen to them, at some point, they go back to what's called their neutral happiness. And the same thing happens with someone who wins the lottery. They go back to their neutral happiness. And so why I bring that up is that, to me, psychosis was both of them. It felt like someone had cut off my legs, but it also felt like I had won the lottery. So you go through this period of like complete euphoria and thinking you're saving the world, to like massive, incredible depression that you can never even imagine. But I was very fortunate through our journey to get back to that neutral place of where I was before. So that was, again, it's something that doesn't happen for people with psychosis. It only hits 1% of the population, so it's not as common when you think about it as depression or anxiety that a lot of therapists will know things about. It took me a while to find the right therapist that understood it and was able to have those proper conversations with me. So that's why, it's important, I guess, for us to have awareness about it, because you can start to notice abnormal behavior that I'm sure even for Jade, maybe, in reflection, could be like, yeah, those were warning signs, and that was something. So it can be something like that.
Well, thank you. And that's just so interesting how and we all struggle with this. Why is it that we can't share with our partner or our family? Like, we feel like we need to hold it in for some reason, and yet we are, like, the jig is up. We're all struggling with one thing or not, right? Like, so why do you think it is that we can't really just own up to it, that I'm struggling to the person that's closest to you?
Yeah, I'm gonna say for me, and unfortunately, there was paranoia, right? And that's a very common thing. So, I mean, you feel, and it's a horrific thing to think about, that you think your partner's gonna hurt you, that you think, I had thoughts of that. I had thoughts, obviously, of him dying. I had all these kind of, very dark thoughts. So it's like you can't go to that person. But I think, Jade could probably, attest to when it got extremely bad. Clearly, I had to go to the hospital. I did. I went to him because I thought I was dying. Right. So you're in. When we were doing the Telling It Like It Is interview, and there was one of the individuals that Jade was talking to talked about panic attacks as another common thing. So all of a sudden I was having these massive panic attacks around that. And then when you're sort of pushed to that point, then you go to because you're like, I don't know what's going on. You just don't know.
Exactly, and so you're going through the trauma, and you're witnessing the trauma, and that's often when you're going through a family, anything. There's one that's feeling the mental health illness, and then there's the one witnessing it, so it's two traumas. And you have to feel how to work that out. So how did you handle watching all of this? Like, what was going through your mind, and how did you handle all of this?
Yeah, it was a little, obviously, a different experience to see the woman that you love and the mother of your children. You've been together for 27 years. And, this happened underneath, under my nose. Like, I didn't see it, and the girls didn't see it, and a lot of things started going through my mind of why did this happen, and things along those lines. But when it finally kicked in, and I really realized it, and she went to the hospital the first time. It was hard, because you get into the psychiatric ward and you're like, holy shit, we got to get you out of here. Like, it's not far off what the movies are portraying. You're like, oh my god. Like, so when they said, oh yeah, you're good in a week, you're kind of like buying into what they're saying. And I was like, oh, this is great. And then we thought things were good, but she wasn't in a good space, but she believed she was, with the paranoia and what she thought. And it didn't happen, the next breakdown didn't happen again until, probably about a month and a half or so later, and then it's like, oh my goodness, there was something that triggered the going back to work that, in the end, it was a good thing because we were able to get to, and go through a longer program and make sure she comes out right. And I mean, it was a struggle because the girls at this time, our daughters were about 10 and 9 and 12ish, and they heard the breakdown and what Kath was saying to me and on all that type of stuff, and we had to call the ambulance, and she went in, and then it turned into, okay, well, how you have to support the kids. They don't understand what's going on. They're crying. It's a long process, and then going back into the hospital, my sister-in-law, ex-sister-in-law, we were allowed 2 people, and it was, again, something that there was points where I didn't think Kath was coming out. And Chantel thought that too, and I was like, holy God, what am I going to tell the kids, how we're going to do? And I'm lucky enough to have a really good support network around of people with Christina Calas, who I went to as a psychologist, and Pete, who's part of the peer guidance team, and my family and friends that I was able to reach out to for support. And even some of our friends would bring food, and I'll have to go to the hospital or do this. And that journey was very, very difficult. And even as you're running a business, I'm having tons and tons of startups start going, oh my God, Jade, how am I going to keep my business alive? And I'm wearing a happy face and going, oh, let's focus on that, and not sharing, we weren't making this public to other than our friends, and deep down, I just want to punch the wall or something, and I'm just telling it like it is, and like nothing's happening, and people don't know. So there was a lot of kept inside for me, and there was a lot of, good friends that I was able to reach out to, but the transition was difficult because the girls were, I remember, and this is something I'll probably never forget, the first time we went to the hospital, and they were, Kath was on, I can't remember the drug, and they were trying to find that right dosage. And it's almost like she didn't even acknowledge the girls, and the girls come, I don't want to see Mom again. And like my heart just sank, like I was like, oh my God, how am I gonna, and they never did come back, and it was very emotional for me, and it was hard to talk to Kath and things like that. And then when we started, coming out, and Crystal mentioned this, and it's something that I truly believe that our journey changed when we stopped the traditional. We got rid of our psychologist who was trying to say, Kath, you're ADHD, you're OCD, and I'm like, no, not a fucking chance. Like this, I know you. You're not. Go look at our bathroom sink. She is not OCD. Come on. Like, if anybody is, I am.
Me too.
and all of a sudden we met this lady, Suze, and she was like a brain retrainer, and we just went cold turkey off the medicine, and we started working on our health, and our buddy, one of my friends I play ball with, opened up his gym, and Kathy started taking courses, and all of a sudden you just saw this, the progression go this way, and an accident, unfortunately, triggered this when Kathy ran a red light, and thank God everybody was okay, and there was no injuries, but it was just that one little thing that I don't know where we would be if we didn't buck the system and say this is where we're going to go, and thank God we have a happy ending and things are good, and our family's kind of back to where we were before, and even when we started to say we want to talk about our journey and what we're doing, we made sure our girls were okay with it. We didn't want them to be kind of burdened or embarrassed or anything along those lines, because we're glossing over a lot of the details, but again, sharing our story now we're really hoping to say that somebody says, like, we got that Facebook Live, and well, you know what? Deep down, there's a lot of people out there that need help, and I see it. So that's something that I think our journey is not unique, but again, I really want to say, if you don't think something is working, change it. Don't just keep doing it because science, or not science, but a psychiatrist says it or something along those lines.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to maybe touch base more on is, we need traditional medicine, we need doctors, they're lifesavers, I need medicine, but also it's not healing me, it's treating the immediate symptom. or sometimes it's not even getting that, right? So was there a moment, like you kind of mentioned, there was the moment there where you're like, nothing's working, this is not, I don't feel like my gut, like we need to go another route. And that's so important for people, is like to be an advocate. And oftentimes when you're ill in bed or having any kind of mental health or physical health problems, you're not able to advocate for yourself. And so it's so important for someone to stand there and be like, something is still not working here. What else can we involve in to help with this treatment process, right? So, you know, how important it is to be that advocate for yourself and your family, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I know you were just asking around, when did I know